Okay. Good morning, everyone. So, the topic of my paper is Strategic Resource Nationalism, the role of rare earth materials in geopolitical rivalries and economic security, the EU perspective. So, this paper examines a defining challenge of our era, that is, how rare earth elements have become the nexus of economic security, technological sovereignty, and geopolitical competition. As the EU navigates China's supply chain dominance, controlling 90% of refining and 60% of mining, this presentation analyzes paper explores three dimensions: the EU's dependency risks, China's coercive economic statecraft, and pathways to resilient supply chains. Now, strategic resource nationalism manifests when states weaponize control over critical minerals, a paradigm shift from 20th century oil politics. Now, China's rare earth monopoly, exempt concentrated supply, creates what scholars term as structural power, where control over inputs control supply chain dynamics and use vulnerability, where heavy reliance on China for rare earth imports. The 2022 simulation by Kiel Institute also highlighted the same. Now, when we talk about China's monopoly, historical precedents, the 2010 rare earth crisis, now China's dominance stems from deliberate state capitalism, subsidies, lax environmental enforcement, and forced technology transfers. The 2023 gallium and germanium restrictions marked an evolution from blunt embargoes to precision coercion, targeting semiconductors while maintaining plausible deniability. Empirical analysis shows such measures increase target states' compliance costs by 300 to 500%. For the European Union, this underscores the security dilemma of green tech. Renewable expansion ironically deepens reliance on adversarial supply chains. China's actions align with theories of asymmetric interdependence, where asymmetric dependencies empower dominant actors to extract political concession. Now, recognizing the dangers of dependence on Chinese rare earths, the US has pursued a multi-pronged strategy to secure alternative supplies. The Defense Production Act, for instance, has been invoked to classify rare earths as essential for national security, unlocking funding for domestic mining and processing projects. Companies like MP Materials, which operates the Mountain Pass mine in California, have received government support to reduce reliance on Chinese refining. For the European Union, navigating the US-China rivalry presents a complex challenge. The EU is reluctant to fully decouple from China, given the deep integration of their economies. Unlike the United States, which has actually pursued aggressive tech restrictions, Europe favors a strategy of de-risking, that is, reducing vulnerabilities while maintaining trade ties. For the case of Russia, Russia possesses substantial rare earth reserves, particularly in the Arctic and Siberian region, but has historically lacked the processing capacity to compete with China. Western sanctions following the invasion of Ukraine have further strained Russia's ability to develop its rare earth sector independently. As a result, Moscow has increasingly turned to China for investment and technology transfer, creating a new axis in the global rare earth market. For Europe, the situation presents both risks and opportunities. While some policymakers have floated the idea of sourcing Russian rare earths to reduce dependence on China, sanctions and political considerations make this highly unlikely. Instead, the EU is more likely to focus on partnerships with Africa and Australia, where untapped reserves offer potential for diversification. Now, the Critical Raw Materials Act represents the European Union's most ambitious attempt to reconcile sustainability with security. Its 2030 targets 10% domestic extraction, 40% EU processing, face implementation hurdles. Sweden's Norakar project, for instance, delayed since 2013, exemplifies the tension between strategic needs and environmental governance. Meanwhile, recycling rates languish below 1% for most rare earths, constrained by technical and economic barriers. The success of this act hinges on overcoming these paradoxes through what the literature calls strategic industrial policy, state intervention to correct market failures in critical sectors. Now, supply chain diversification, where EU could actually talk about strategic partnerships and innovation, collaborate with resource-rich countries like Canada and Greenland. And there are challenges in Africa due to political instability and China's entrenched presence. So African ventures risk replicating colonial extractivism. Reshoring is prohibitively expensive. Lina's Malaysian plant requires around $800 million of subsidies to compete with China. Now, there are other challenges as well. First is sustainable mining. So, public resistance to mining projects in regions like Sweden and Portugal. There's a need for strict sustainability standards and transparent community engagement. Then there's human rights risks in alternative supply chains, where there's ethical concern in sourcing from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Myanmar. Then EU's proposed corporate sustainability diligence directive is also there, which attempts to talk about balance, but enforcement remains untested against state-backed Chinese firms. Then there's high costs of reshoring and reliance on China. Financial supply chain challenges are there, and there's importance of public-private partnership and state subsidies. Then there's role of private sector. So there's coordination among member states for a unified investment strategy, potential establishment of a sovereign wealth fund for critical minerals. Then there's geopolitical risk and strategic autonomy, focusing on strategic redundancy rather than autonomy, balancing cooperation with the US, also while not letting it go towards over-reliance. Then there's circular economy solutions, that is boosting rare earth recycling from electronic waste. And ethical diversified sourcing, deepening partnership with resource-rich nations, ensuring ethical sourcing and maintaining diversified sourcing. And there's technological innovation, that is accelerating R&D into rare earth-free alternatives and improving mining and refining technology. And strengthening international partnerships, collaborations with resource-rich allies, development of sustainable mining projects, and accelerating recycling technology and material substitution, developing trade defense mechanisms, and strategic stockpiling for crisis preparedness, balancing cooperation and strategic interdependence. And in conclusion, I would just say that the EU must pursue strategic interdependence, combining diversification and diversified partnerships with selective autonomy. This would require a BRICS-style mineral alliance with democracies, R&D tax incentives, and to scale recycling, and an anti-coercion instrument under the WTO rules. Now, the alternative, that is full decoupling, is economically untenable. Resilience in multipolar systems derives not from autarky but from network redundancy. And through proactive balance policies, the EU can transform its current vulnerabilities into strengths, ensuring that its green and digital transitions proceed without compromising its values or autonomy. Thank you so much.